Well, I think in order for us to wake up, we need a wake-up call. And in 1986, I got the call. I was in a triathlon in Palm Springs, California. I was in the biking portion of the race and was negotiating a turn, and the police officer that was helping me to make the turn had his back to the oncoming traffic. So the moment I made the turn, this four-wheel drive Bronco going 55 miles an hour just clipped me from behind, and I landed pretty squarely on the ground and ultimately wound up breaking 6 vertebrae in my spine, some bone fragments on the spinal cord, and it had created some neurological problems for me. And the conventional treatment for that is a Harrington rod surgery, where they cut the back parts of your vertebrae off and then they screw in these long stainless steel rods. And
that's not just one surgery, that's multiple, isn't it?
Well, it could be multiple, but the purpose of the Harrington rods is to pull the spine back, the spinal column off the spinal cord, and to stabilize it. And it sounded like a good idea for any patient that I see with that condition. I would recommend the surgery, but this was me, and it wasn't so quick to just rush into it. So after 4 opinions from 4 of the leading surgeons in Southern California, I really had to make a significant decision. Do I weigh my old beliefs against the new paradigm and jump off into the unknown and try something new? If there's an intelligence that's giving us life, could I make contact with it? Could I give it a specific plan, instructions, a template, and then surrender it to a greater mind and allow it to do the healing for me? Mm-hmm. Or do I stick with a conventional model and, take the safe route and possibly have a handicap and live on addictive medications the rest of my life? So I decided to go from a philosophical realm and to initiate that to try to create a new experience. But I mean, really, upon reflection, it's really just 2 models. There's a mechanistic model of reality where when things break, you fix them. But then there's also a vitalistic model of reality that transcends materialism. And that vitalistic model says that there's energy, there's information, there's an intelligence that's organizing trillions of functions per second in every cell of your body, and if that intelligence is a consciousness and an awareness, then maybe you can become present with it enough to begin to give it some instructions. And so I thought, hell, I might as well take a chance. I can't heal my back, but a greater mind can do it for me. So I thought, if my will matches its will, if my mind matches its mind, and if my love for life matches its love for life, it should answer the call. So I wanted to develop a relationship with it and give it really specific instructions. And if I lost my focus, or if I lost my attention, I would stop and start all over again. And that's really when I started to learn about the mind and the brain, because I realized how unfocused I was, number one. And number two, when we're in crisis or trauma, we wind up focusing on what we don't want instead of what we do want. So turning that battleship around was my dark night of the soul. And
huge. Yes.
I think after about 6 weeks, though, I started noticing some very significant changes. That was the moment when I started noticing those changes, that what I was doing was making a difference. And then I started doing it with more passion. I thought this idea that the power that made the body heals the body. I mean, I believe that to this day, and I believe that the quantum model of reality explains healing better than anything. I mean, you can't explain how even a cut heals without bringing the quantum model. I mean, you can talk about molecules and circuits and chemicals and attractions and repulsions, but that's really not how it works. I mean, that's a model that's very limited. So I said, if the power that made the body heals the body, and this consciousness is an awareness, and awareness is paying attention, then I have to be completely present with it. Just like when you're with your daughter and she's with you, she knows when you're present with her and when you're not, and you know when she's present with you and when you're not. Right. And this intelligence requires our presence, which means your mind can't wander to the future, to the past, and to extraneous information. You have to be completely present, and I wanted to create a very specific instruction. I wanted to reconstruct every single one of my vertebrae step by step, from start to stop, and repair every single one of those areas that I knew from the scans. And if I lost my focus, because I wasn't present, I was thinking about living in a wheelchair, if I should sell my home or my practice, then I lost my focus. I wasn't creating a clear signal. I would stop and I would start all over again. Now here's the problem. I would start getting frustrated that I lost my focus, and then when I got emotional, I got frustrated, then I got more unfocused. And so after a couple weeks, I started figuring out that instead of reacting, just to keep bringing it back, and I was increasing my attention span during that time. And then once I was able to complete a very clear picture, it would take me 2 or 3, sometimes longer, just 3 hours immersed in the inner world, but I was wiring new circuits over time every single day, and it started getting easier because as nerve cells wire together, you start constructing physical changes in the brain. Those changes then you can reactivate the next day, and they should be easier to select. So it started getting easier for me, and I started to be able to do it in shorter and shorter amount of time. And when I really got through it the first time from start to finish without losing my focus, it was like I hit a tennis ball in the sweet spot. Something clicked, and when I knew that something happened, and that's when I started feeling all the changes in my body, my pain, all the sensations changing, and that's when I knew that if I was making those changes outside of me, I should pay attention to what I was doing inside of me and do it with more conviction, with more intensity. This is a great study. They gave a group of children an inhaler for asthma. And what they did was they blended a scent of cinnamon with the stimulation of the drug. And every time they had an asthmatic reaction, they would inhale the albuterol, and it would cause bronchial dilation, and it would help them breathe better. But what they were doing is they were inhaling also the scent of cinnamon. Unbeknownst to the children, they kept lowering the value of the drug, and the children were just spraying the cinnamon's water in their mouth, and they were conditioning their body chemically by removing the drug and anticipating the effect of the drug. And so it works with pain as well. You can give people a morphine injection, give them a morphine injection, give them a morphine injection, and then don't give them the morphine injection, and the brain makes their own morphine.
Wow.
You can give a Parkinson's patient a certain drug to help their dopamine levels. Do it again, do it again, do it again, and then give them a saline injection, and before you know it, they're making their own dopamine. Now, not just a little dopamine, 200 times the amount of dopamine. So if you are conditioning yourself to take an aspirin every day because it helps to reduce your headaches or your pain in your back, in time then, if you produce a pill that looks like an aspirin and you give it to a patient, a certain percentage of them will accept, believe, and surrender that they're taking the aspirin when they're just taking a saline injection, and their body will create their own anti-inflammatories by thought alone. Now, they can't consciously make their pain go away. They can't consciously increase their dopamine levels.
It's the routine.
It's the conditioning in which if you keep conditioning the body in anticipation, just like Pavlov's dog begins to salivate when the bell is rang, the body begins to prepare itself for the event ahead of the actual event by creating the exact chemistry in anticipation of it occurring.